Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Jedi Council chambers. I'm Urza Master. Joining me as always, Jedi Master Cilia Maz and Lord Uther, and we convene for the final time for Season 2 of Disney Plus's and Star Wars, The Mandalorian. Season 2 ends on, shall we say, a bit of a cliffhanger. And I think there's going to be a lot to say. So I'm not going to take any more time with my intro, and I'm going to turn it right over to Jedi Master Cilia Maz for a little bit of background. And let's just rip the Band-Aid off this one. Let's go for it.
Hello there. Thank you, Jedi Master Urza Master. Thank you, Jedi Master Lord Uther. And thanks to all of you graying Jedi for coming with us on this journey through the life of Mandalorian and Grogu. We are indeed on Chapter 16, the Season 2 finale, The Rescue. This episode has many things we're going to go into. It also strikes a personal chord for me. It aired on December 18th, 2020, and these were, as you may remember in the country, dark times. We had a lot of sickness running through. We had a lot of questions that needed answering. I myself had just gone through a painful 2.5 weeks from the dreaded COVID-19, and it was December 18th, 2020, where I first day in almost 18 days that I felt a little bit like myself. I had been bedridden and off of work and losing weight left and right, and it was not a fun experience. This was before we had vaccines and over-the-counter things and under-the-counter things to address these symptoms. But at the time, I was kind of in my own little void. It was 7 days before Christmas, and my family was not traveling that year, so it was going to be an isolated and lonely holiday. And who should come to our rescue but Jon Favreau, scripting an extraordinary 50 minutes of television to cap off an ambitious second season of this program. So yes, we have Jon Favreau at the keyboard, and we have director Peyton Reed on his second journey this season. You'll remember Peyton did Chapter 10, the Ice Spider episode that reminds us of arachnophobia and every childhood phobia. We discussed Chapter 10 and Peyton Reed's initial directing on The Graying Jedi 24. And if you go into our archive and sign up, friends, you'll hear everything that we had to say and why it gave us the willies. But he got the plum directing assignment for the finale. And we brought the whole gang back, friends. Anybody who's anybody in The Mandalorian makes a guest appearance in this episode. We have Dr. Pershing, Omid Abtai. We have Tamora Morrison as Boba Fett. We have Gina Carano as Cara Dune. We have Mercedes Varnadero. I'm having trouble with my English this evening. Forgive me. I've been speaking Huttese. Mercedes Varnado, who you'll know as Sasha Banks in the pro wrestling circuit and as Casca Reeves in this show. We have Katie Sackhoff as Bo-Katan Kryze. We have Ming-Na Wen as Fennec Shand. We have Giancarlo Esposito as Moff Gideon. We have Katie O'Brien, who's currently on the big screen as a bisexual bodybuilder in 1989, who has a thing for Kristen Stewart and steroids in Love Lies Bleeding. She does a fantastic job in that, on the big screen. And here she's playing Imperial Comms Officer. Keep your eye on Katie O'Brien. She's got secrets. And last but not least, we have a very special guest star, which the other members of the council are going to go into in great detail. This episode was so super secret. Not only were pages of the script restricted, even to the people who were appearing on camera, but they did no previews, like little next week on The Mandalorian. And as you'll note at the end credits, before the surprise bonus tag, there were no pre-production sketches for this episode. The credits just ran over a black screen. So they were so sure that the big revelation here at the episode's climax would be spoiled somehow by the internets and fanboys. They were, quite frankly, amazed that as many people were surprised and shocked by how it all turned out as it ended up doing. And friends, I'm going to have the council kind of lead us in our discussion as to where they want to go. I will say, though, that on my sickbed, and I don't exaggerate, I felt, as a Star Wars fan, as just someone who loves great television, great storytelling, I felt a peculiar sense of overwhelming awe and joy in the last 10 minutes of this episode. And I can only hope that I will continue to experience that kind of wonder and marvel and excitement as I did watching the episode reach its conclusion. It's one of the best feelings. I felt weightless, and it wasn't because I was sick. It was because it truly, in that moment, brought me to a place of just undisguised, unremorseful, just joy. And I don't want to say too much more because, again, I do want the council to lead us there. I will have some further comments on the back end. But, gentlemen, the show is called The Rescue, and that's exactly what it is. It's just 50 minutes of pulse-pounding excitement from beginning to end. What say yous?
Urza, may I please?
Oh, please, Lord Uther.
I usually default to you, Jedi Master, Urza Master, but I would love to go first if you don't mind.
By all means.
First of all, Jedi Master Silly Moss, you did say Ice Pirates. I was hoping you were going to talk about the movie because it's one of my favorite movies.
With Robert
ever.
Urich, yes.
But that's a whole nother story, a podcast possibly we could get into. And look, finally, finally we get the Luke Skywalker that we've always wanted. So I'm just going to leap to the very end of this episode. Though we had a wonderful Mando Moff Gideon fight. It was wonderful. Though we had these souped up, robots that had some midichlorians possibly in them or something like that. Though we had all these Mandalorians there. Though we had the Darksaber, we had all these great things. We got the Luke Skywalker that I wanted to see. We got the Luke Skywalker that I better see in his own series or in the Thrawn trilogy as even if, what's the guy's name? Sebastian
Stan.
That guy. Even if he plays Luke, I'm fine with that, which I know we've kind of had that discussion before. I also love the parallel of Vader in Rogue One going through tearing up all the rebels, and here Luke kind of does the same thing, turn on his lightsaber, ripping through all of the whatever we're calling, what are they, stormtroopers? Dark troopers, tearing them up. And then, I like the decision at the end that Grogu has to make. Like, we see this where he's not sure what he wants to do, and we get Mando, taking his helmet off again, and just the way Pedro Pascal plays this role, whether it's through his voice or with his typical emotional facial features that he gives us, he is just such a top-notch performer overall. And to see the struggle for him to, knowing he had to do what was best for the child, though, probably deep down inside, obviously not wanting to do that, but knowing that was best. And Luke walks out with him, and I remember thinking to myself, is this it? Like, is it over? Or are we going to see, Mando go solo? Like, what's going to happen here? What's the next step? I mean, like I said, when we get to the very end and I get to give my rating, and all of you out there who know me just so well from all these podcasts and years of fan loyalty to us, when I show you what I'm using, you'll understand how much this episode meant to me. It's like like I said, it's Luke Skywalker we didn't get and that we deserved in the prequels. Got him here. Urza Master, please continue.
If I could steal a Lord Utherism, yes.
Oh, wonderful. Well, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was the Luke Skywalker all of us wanted to be on the playground. Like after we saw Return of the Jedi, this is this is the scene we played out
Yes,
in our playground days, right?
dude, that
You,
is the best way to put it. I'm sorry, I got to stop you for a second. I remember being outside at recess, climbing up on these mountains of snow, like I was on Planet Hoth, being Luke Skywalker, taking on Wampas and all these other things. Like that is the perfect way to put it. I did not mean to steal your thunder, but if that's got to be one of the greatest lines that has ever come out of any of our podcasts. That is perfect.
I am yours a master. No, I mean seriously, it took me right back to when I was in elementary school and the special editions had come out. So like my generation, that was really our introduction to Star Wars, I think. I mean, I had seen them, the originals, prior to the digital edits, but that was like my generation Star Wars exposure until episodes 1 through 3. And I remember playing with all the Star Wars toys, the Kenner toys that, parents gave their kids at, we had this early morning elementary school thing for all us kids who had like blue collar parents who were gone at 4, 5, 6 in the morning. You got dropped off to like this early morning daycare basically program. And, it was like pre recess, you had your breakfast, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I will never forget the time we would spend playing with Star Wars toys because all I had at home was an A-Wing and the little pilot guy in an A-Wing. I still have the A-Wing somewhere. I lost the pilot guy. I don't know what happened to him.
Oh, son of a...
But I always wanted Boba Fett in Slave One, and my buddy had Darth Vader. Not this one, but a much cooler one with articulating appendages. No lightsaber, though. And one day, one of the not teachers, but they were like volunteers came in and they brought in a bucket of Star Wars toys. Now, there were a bunch of like the crappy ones you got for like $2 at Kmart, but there were 3 Luke Skywalkers. And I tell you, we lined up 1,000 stormtroopers, it felt like, and we were all Luke Skywalker, and we all played this like, we're coming down the corridor to rescue Princess Leia, blah blah, and we're like blasting through these guys, and it was like this scene that frankly I didn't expect. I was kind of like, ooh, what is this? Are they setting it up for like a new big bad? Is this Moff Gideon like having somebody come through who's like a rival Empire guy? Is it Thrawn? Like I didn't know. Like, is there a rival faction that's trying to steal Grogu? Like, there's just the coolest thing about this show is there's always more stuff around the corner. Never would have imagined. I mean, I kind of like, I'll admit, about a minute in, I was like, all right, I think I know who this is now. But it didn't ruin it. I was like, oh shit, there's Luke Skywalker. And I was a kid again. And that was such a cool thing because this whole show, this whole season had moments where I'm like, I feel like I'm back in the theater watching the Star Wars again. And right then and there, I was, 7 years old watching, Return of the Jedi. Just this episode hit harder, I think, than Return of the Jedi ever could have hoped to. I blame that on 2 things: Ewoks and Carrie Fisher's speech at the end. Sorry, Carrie Fisher, rest in peace. I love her very much. But that speech to Han Solo at the end is like the most poorly acted thing. It sounded like she had string cheese in her mouth. When we get to the movies,
Oh, yes.
if I say my rating may be affected.
Oh, yes.
But I loved it. I mean, and the thing was, that sequence with Luke Skywalker really wasn't even the best part. It was just like the icing on the cake. Everything else about this episode, had they ended it right here and it wasn't Luke Skywalker, and they just left it of like, what do we do now? And left it as like a cliffhanger, it would have been amazing. And I've been like, oh, can't wait for season 3. I also was kind of like, wow, is this the Mandalorian story? Like, I feel like there's more they could do. And at the time, I knew they were going to do more, so I kind of feel a little cheated by the fact that I didn't watch this when it came out, because I knew I could hop right to season 3 or Book of Boba Fett. So I was enthralled. It was a thrill ride. I think it's going to be very difficult for Disney and Lucasfilm to ever top that moment, unless they do a Luke Skywalker show, and they keep it very tightly under wraps as to what's going to happen in it. But even at that, it's going to be tough.
I want to echo both Jedi Master Urza Master and Jedi Master Lord Uther, but just take it in a slightly different refracted prism. I had playground memories myself, but not memories that actually happened, just the what ifs. And this show, if nothing else, has given me these what ifs as they're unfolding right before us. For example, Slave One in a running gun battle with an Imperial shuttle to start the episode. That's a terrific visual. And that's something that if you had the Kenner play sets, you probably did. In the forest, behind your home or out on the playground and so forth. You had a Slave One plastic model and you're chasing the Imperial shuttle, which came out with Return of the Jedi, and you're making the laser sounds and shooting the missiles. And you did that, you played that, but we never actually got to see it until now. And so that to me was like a really great, I'm still waiting for the Slave One Millennium Falcon, action. Right? Because, in Empire Strikes Back, he just trails them to Bespin after hiding out in the garbage, dumped by the Imperial Star Destroyer. So I'm still waiting for that moment, but that will be a transcendent moment. Seeing generations of Star Wars legacy characters, old versus new, seeing Grogu with R2-D2 at the end, that's fantastic. That's just a moment, right? Literally, R2-D2 was considered the cute robot in the original trilogy, and everyone went, yeah. And now here is Grogu, who has taken over merchandising and plush toy sales and the like. So there's just, this show knows, go back to season 1, chapter 2, when we had Jawas and Din Djarin battling on a sand crawler. I never thought I needed to see a fully armored Mandalorian fighting his way up a la Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade up a sandcrawler and getting things plunked at him, and he's disintegrating Jawas with his rifle, and then they zap him with their stun guns, and then he tumbles. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, as writers, co-executive producers, shepherds of this series, they instinctively know not just to offer what might be considered fan fiction or fan service or things like that, but moments where you're just genuinely excited because as Star Wars fans, these were the building blocks of a lot of our imaginations and our dreams and our fantasies, and there's a place for them now, even as we age up and get older and have children and grandchildren of our own. There's still a place to include us in those fantasies, and I think we've all sort of identified that this show shrewdly was able to pluck that heartstring in us, but not feeling like this is shameless manipulation and, a very cynical attempt to try and wring something out of a franchise, that has been going on for 40 plus years. It probably had a different landing for the three of us as we watched it, as it might our children, our 13-year-olds and our 6-year-olds and our 3-year-olds. But they too got excited when they probably sat down and watched that, and in a different way. And that's the beauty, power, the transcending of just, good science fiction television into something more. Something that kind of brings us together, binds us like the Force.
Well, I think I'm going to take points that both of you made and kind of bring them together. I love the idea of the random bucket of action figures, and then what Jedi Master Silly Moss said about having Mando, you never thought you would see a Mandalore go against Jawas unless you were playing with action figures and you didn't have anything else. And then that scenario happens.
Yes.
And I think that's just an excellent point, that we've seen some of that. Things that we never thought would happen. That's the freshness, right? or again, and that's how you know this is someone who loves Star Wars. This is someone who is, whether we call him a Star Wars geek or nerd, I don't care what you call him, whatever, but can have the imagination of having that bucket of toys
Yes.
and making something happen with it. I think it's a fantastic piece there. I also think, though, I think when like Return of the Jedi ended and then we got the prequels, and I'll stop bashing the prequels for now, but it almost seemed like, okay, Luke just goes right to Ahch-To and that's it, and then he becomes a hermit. To both your points, there's so much more story to tell, and it's quality story. And I think that's what, when I said Mando, the Mandalorian saved Star Wars for me, I think it's the recognition that there's more stories to tell, and now they're going to do it. And if they got to take a leap here or take some stuff, and I remember there was some complaining too about, well, they're using all the legacy stuff for the stuff for the books, and I thought Disney was going to ignore that, and that's not canon. I think they were okay with themselves to say we're going to borrow some of that, and we're going to employ some of it, and we might even see it with Thrawn when it comes to Ahsoka and maybe the next 3 movies. And one last point, because I think Urza Master looks like he might want to say something too. I think people loved R2-D2 because R2 was like your loyal dog, always by your side, always cute, always there for you. You know, would maybe growl at someone, or R2 might use that little electrical current thing to go after someone if they got a little too close. But I think that was always the beauty of R2-D2, is it almost came across. And again, one of the points that Urza Master made so long ago that I absolutely just think is so strong is droids just all having their own personalities when it comes to Star Wars and being such an intricate part of the universe. And if you're not going to tell me that you preferred R2-D2 over C-3PO, y'all are lying to me. Because no one wanted C-3PO. They always wanted R2-D2 around. Urza.
That's so true. But you know
Thank
what?
you.
In my old age, I've come to really enjoy C-3PO quite a bit. Particularly in the Ahsoka appearance. That, to me, was like... We always talk about how Hayden Christensen, like, totally renewed our faith in his Anakin Skywalker in Ahsoka. C-3PO, like, in one, 2-minute scene, completely upended the whole C-3PO thing. And I always go back to, Lucas giving C-3PO and R2-D2 so much screen time, is they were kind of the Shakespearean, like, almost comic relief characters, and what I think is interesting about what Mando does is it does preserve that to a certain extent, with the sounds and the expressions of Grogu. You get a little bit of that comic relief, a little bit of that dramatic break, and you still get this endearing quality. Like when R2-D2 gets zapped in the first movie, and at the end of the movie is all shiny and new and toddling back and forth. Like, I mean, tell me that doesn't bring a tear to your manly eye. Like, come on now. We were all like, I love that little thing.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
But it's the same with Grogu and Din Djarin. I mean, you really... And of course there's the whole father-son thing, which I think, as graying Jedi males, we probably identify with a little bit, as you get that touching sort of, you have to go now and go Grogu. And it's just like the beauty of Star Wars beyond just its incredible employment of mythology and mythos. It's also the emotional strength and how it can tell stories of great depth with such I guess you could say with such campy comic action sometimes. And that's always been the strength of Star Wars, and this is a show that is so true to that legacy. And that's where I think future Star Wars shows learned and can learn a lot from this production. We've seen it done well with Ahsoka. Certainly I think Andor Season 2 is going to capture a lot of that same spirit, even though it's geared towards an older audience. It has enough of that balance, although maybe more of an acerbic wit. It just glides. I mean, that is That's as good as clean burning propane.
Indeed.
And with that, I think it's a good time to jump to our lightsaber ratings for the great re-entry of Luke Skywalker in the final episode of Season 2 of Mandalorian. I would love to start with Jedi Master Cilia Maz, because I know he's excited. He's been talking about it for weeks now. Cilia Maz, please bestow upon this episode your lightsaber rating.
Well, as a writer myself, I've often been accused of wearing my heart on my sleeve, and this evening I wear my grade on my sleeve. As you can see here, this is the Hartford Whalers, a defunct NHL franchise who would later become the Carolina Hurricanes, I believe. But they were a gloriously downtrodden hockey franchise in Hartford, Connecticut. They never won anything, but boy, they had really good looking uniforms, which is why I'm wearing their jersey this evening. This is Hartford Green. This show, it does, like we said, it anticipates and acknowledges and celebrates everything in the past that we know and love. And it also sets us on a course for another exciting season. Because don't forget, even though Moff Gideon is defeated in the Battle of Lightsaber versus Beskar, by Din Djarin claiming the Darksaber, he's inadvertently screwed up Bo-Katan's eventual coronation.
Great point.
And so now we've suddenly created a rift and a rivalry that looks dangerous, because if she ultimately wants to fulfill her ambition of leading Mandalore, she will have to challenge Din Djarin and conceivably to the death. So it's a great new avenue, a signal. Just like at the end of the first season, Din Djarin was tasked with returning Grogu to his people. Well, that's what the second season's overarching story arc was, and now we have a third season story arc being set up, the battle for control of Mandalore, and how will that play out? So a lot of exciting questions and things to come there. And then we had a great tag. If you were fortunate enough to watch through the credits, you saw Boba Fett and Fennec Shand returning to the Dune Sea on Tatooine, taking out the late Jabba the Hutt's major domo, Bib Fortuna, and ascending to the throne as the daimyo of Tatooine, which we will be covering in our next exciting installments of The Graying Jedi, the series that came 1 year and 11 days after this episode aired, the Book of Boba Fett. So Graying Jedi fans, good time to subscribe now if you haven't already. Good time to get limbered up, because we are heading back to Tatooine and its twin suns for further adventures in the past, present, and future of Star Wars. So yes, as green as it gets, friends, for this episode, this season, this show of The Mandalorian.
Oh, it gets greener. Because, sorry, there, Urza Master, I'm just going to take the reins again. I'm running with it.
Go ahead.
Besides this incredible episode that gave us the Luke Skywalker that we deserve and we love, this green that I'm about to show all of you, and the picture I'm about to show all of you, is also a thank you for us almost being 1,000 subscribers, because all of you out there in the past year, we've been doing these shows and making changes and making additions and all these great things. We're almost at 1,000 subs, so thank all of you for doing that. Please share us out there. It's free. Join us, won't you? Please. And with that being said, I don't just give this a Celtic green, but I give it a Larry Legend Celtic green. And we all know it does not get any better than the hick from French Lick. And for me, this episode is everything that we wanted for Luke Skywalker, just like Larry Legend was everything I wanted from the NBA. Michael Jordan, too. But anyway, so for me, it gets a Celtic green, Larry Legend lightsaber color. Urza Master, dazzle us as you always do, my Jedi friend.
Oh, I've been waiting for this. So, I can only think of one way to put this that would accurately describe how I felt that this episode reached out with an ethereal, perhaps even ghost-like hand and grasped me by the nostalgia and the childhood, held me tight in place, made me feel things, good things, and it made me almost mournful. So I give it
Ah!
a Hand of Apollo,
Ah!
who mourns for Adonis,
Wow.
green. And for those of you who are one of our almost 1,000 subscribers, you can check out the Warp Core podcast to learn more about this lovely, lovely visual aid. This is fantastic, fantastic way to end the season. I'm glad it didn't end the series, but oh man, what a ride this season has been. I can only hope we get more Bo-Katan, more Mando, more Grogu, and for the love of Pete, please, please give us more callbacks to episode 1 in the next season. Until then, may the Force be with you.
And also with the